Hello and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this special conversation with the Economic Times. My name is Ashutosh Sinha, and over the next 90 minutes, we'll be talking about the changing workforce management dynamics, all what's happening in the sector, with a focus on, well, we'll be speaking to a lot of manufacturing companies. That'll be our topic for the exchange of views between all the important voices. The Economic Times and UKG present Changing Workforce Management Dynamics in Manufacturing. I have my colleague, Nasrin Sultana, joining me as well. Welcome, Nasrin.
Thanks, Ashu. It is such an important issue to talk about the phase of manufacturing that has been rapidly changing during these 2 tough years. The pandemic has made the workforce more mobile, in many cases, geographically spread out. The way the workforce needs to be engaged at any manufacturing operations has undergone sea change. All that means manufacturing operations need to be tweaked to for it to be business as usual. As we hear it so often, it is just part of the new normal, isn't it, Ashu?
Absolutely, you're spot on, Nasrin. Yesterday, at the peak of the pandemic, it was about managing with whatever workforce was available. That was the key requirement for, for companies which wanted their operations to be very efficient. Now, one of the key issues for manufacturing companies about smartly managing and optimizing its resources at the manufacturing location, at the plant. So since the workers are in the office on each day, how can each of their maybe scheduling be made more efficient? And not everyone, just remember, not everyone is in the office every day. The workplace today is often hybrid, adding to the challenges for the plant manager. In addition, we must remember this, Nasrin, as well. The plant manager also needs to manage some who are remote workers while managing their different skills and employment types as well. So too many variables to bother about. So that's really complex, isn't it, Nasrin?
Let me add some more to that, Ashu. All of what you said must be done while the worker's health status must be monitored, and the company also keeps an eye on the uncertainties because of the virus. The enterprise-wide systems could help run the plants, the workforce, but needs a fresh push. For different companies, the return to office plans could be dependent on some of the input that will come from the situation on the shop floor. While this has been happening, the learning and development for the organization must continue, Ashu.
Yeah, that's obviously some of those challenges continue. So as we welcome and introduce our experts who will be joining us in just a couple of minutes for the conversation, just a reminder, please do post your questions in the Q&A tab, and we'll get the best among the questions to be addressed by the experts. Let me introduce the experts to you. So Dr. Urmi Chatterjee, we have, she's Vice President HR, Honeywell APAC. Mr. Rajinder S. Sachdeva is Chief Operating Officer, Eicher Trucks and Buses. Nasrin, who else do we have?
We are also being joined by seasoned experts with experience in the manufacturing sector. Please help me in welcoming C. Chandru, Chief Operating Officer, Smelters at Hindustan Zinc. Akash Khandelwal, he is also the CEO, Engineering Business at UFlex. And Sumeet Doshi, he is the Senior Director and Country Manager, India at UKG. Please welcome, gentlemen, to the guest. And Urmi, let's start the conversation.
Okay, let's first request Sumeet to begin and start with a brief welcome note. If Sumeet, if you can explain some of the challenges companies are facing as they consider return to work in various forms. That is the big challenge, because hybrid, remote, full workforce or part workforce. What are some of those challenges?
Sure, Ashutosh. First of all, thank you so much for having me on this panel, and and a very warm welcome to all the panelists. I look forward to hearing from your experiences and learning as we go through this panel. Uh, so workforce is a very important topic when it comes to manufacturing, and it's very close to our heart as a company. At UKG, we say our purpose is people. And we are focused on working with organizations to try and deliver or help them manage their workforce better, especially in manufacturing. So to Ashutosh's point, in fact, the way workforce has the dynamics of workforce, let's put it that way, the workforce dynamics have evolved. They were already evolving actually before the pandemic hit, right? People were already talking about the future of work. They were talking about the gig workforce. All of these things were already there in some bits and pieces before the pandemic struck. And the pandemic was like in one fell swoop, it decided that everyone just needs to go ahead and adapt and adopt to each one of those paradigms, and maybe far more, right? And it threw its challenges. I think Ashutosh already mentioned that starting 2020, the objective of manufacturers like all of you and many others was how to get things done despite the challenges that we have. But I think as we are hopefully coming out of it, the whole direction is now around how do we use this situation to drive better efficiencies, drive better optimization, and as they say, companies that deal better with adversity or sail through adversity are the ones who actually become more competitive going forward because they've learned from it, right? And so in terms of managing workforces, I think Ashutosh hit the nail on the head when he said right now there are a lot of areas that organizations are beginning to look at. One of the key areas in manufacturing, which I think was already a big ticket item in non-manufacturing and services space, but in manufacturing is becoming big, as employee engagement, and that too specifically blue collared and contract employee engagement. I mean, I think there is enough done for white collared employees, for the senior level employees in most organizations, but organizations are increasingly realizing that you've got to get your blue collar employees on the shop floor. You've got to schedule them. You've got to take care. You've got to get their the production to be taken care. But until you take care of them from a health perspective or from an availability perspective, from their preferences perspective, they won't give you the best. And I think that's a very significant change that we are seeing in manufacturing as we go along, where the whole question is now, and I'd love to hear from the panelists as we go along, and Ashutosh, I'm sure, will talk about it. But the whole question in our minds is now organizations looking at how do we look at productivity along with employee experience? Are they say the two sides of the same coin?
Right.
Are they a balancing act? I think that will be an interesting area to also learn from the panelists here. And we are seeing a very significant thought process developing in those areas. I think with that, I'd like to give it back to Ashutosh and over to you, Ashutosh.
Okay, Nasrin.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for putting things in perspective, Sumeet. That sets the stage, of course, for our conversation in the next 90 minutes. Let's try and break the conversation into three parts. First, we will focus on the return of work or return to work and some of the challenges around that. In the second part, let's try and understand some of the operational issues that are cropping up and many challenges that companies are overcoming with their policy changes. And for the third and the last part, let's talk about some of the steps that companies can take in the learning and development, culture and technology issues, or the wider issues that crop up that companies may want to address going forward. So to set the ball rolling, let me come to Rajinder. So let's try to begin to understand the challenges faced with the pickup in the economic activities that we have seen post-COVID. The landscape for manufacturing industries and engaging with workers has changed dramatically over the last 2 years. As you gear up for the normal work schedules, how have things changed in your sector, or more specifically in your company, and how are you planning to executing those production activities? Rajinder.
Good afternoon, everybody, and Nasrin and thank you very much for taking me on this panel. And I come from automotive industry and manufacture truck, bus, and engines here in India under Eicher trucks and buses. And yeah, post-COVID has been a change, very, very major change, where we've seen that a lot of migration of the manufacturing workforce has been there to their native places. And post-COVID, we see that 15 to 20% of the people have not returned back. They have stayed there at the native places. There's one change we have seen that thing. And second is that migration of manufacturing workforce to the other verticals like e-commerce or finance or food delivery system. A lot of people have migrated to those type of area, leading to a lot of shortage of the manpower on the workplace. That's what we experienced. A lot of work we had to do so that we can get the manpower, because all said and done, 2.5 years of COVID, and I can say that not a single day was there when plant was stopped. Plant was still working. The challenge was overcome successfully, and we organizing the manpower was the #1 challenge, so that we run the show. And there we had to quickly set up the competency centers along with the help of Madhya Pradesh government, where we inducted the people, fresh people, and we trained them for 3 to 4 months in our specific technology, and then they were deployed. That was the one thing we do. Second was that because of the COVID, a lot of remote working was there. How to maintain our equipment in the absence of the people in the plant physically. So there, Industry 4.0, IoT, lot of technology and projects we had to prepare. Those implementation helped me to ensure that although people may not be in the plant, manufacturing team may not be fully in the plant, but still all the parameters are available on their apps, and they can monitor all the parameters which are critical for safety and quality. So that was also implementation of the various IoT initiative and Industry 4.0 initiative that also helped us. Third was that taking care of the people. When people are joining, a lot of fear has been there, particularly when they are working in the close proximity, social distancing, and not able to maintain in an industry like automotive industry. We had to do a lot of changes on the manufacturing line, where we had to change the throughput time. We had to change the even the conveyor line, so that number of vehicles, if you are on the one point of time, you have got 20 vehicles on the conveyor line, we reduced that to 10. So alternate places only we had put the vehicle, leading that people are, when people are operating and assembling the vehicle, they are able to maintain the social distance, and they are able to maintain that COVID appropriate behavior in that thing. So those were the challenges we took on ourselves, and we tried to resolve that thing. But finally, I think I can say that taking care of the safety and health, ensuring that all the vaccinations are done within the plants, making sure that health checks are done daily basis, and all the support is provided on the health safety, not for them, for the workforce, but also for their families. That all the things which helped us to survive, and we could keep our head above water and run the plants in very, very difficult scenario also.
Very interesting, Mr. Sachdeva, the points that you're making. Urmi, in terms of engagement with the workers, because this was something that we also spoke about a little while earlier, can you share some of the details of the changes that were brought about in the way companies are working pre-pandemic and post-pandemic?
Sure, Ashutosh. So I would like to definitely start by thanking all the manufacturing employees across the board who throughout the pandemic were on their toes, because, you know, in most organizations like ours, we were doing, you know, mask PPE and mask production, and that kind of became multiple folds compared to the pre-pandemic production. So there was never a point of time where we could really reduce their coming to work. So a lot of gratitude for those employees, because we had a larger rest of the organization who were, you know, remotely working, barring this particular group of people. And yes, absolutely, we realized that engaging, you know, this set of people was primary. One, they were taking a lot of risks in coming for the organization from a health perspective. There were risks involved. Number two, you know, they were seeing that the rest of the organization was not there, right? But they had to be had to be in. So, so we started a lot of manager level engagements with this group of people. I think it was there pre-pandemic. We just increased the level of engagement, connectivity with them. On the shop floor, how do you connect to them, make them feel good, communicate a lot more with them. So what is happening outside, what is happening rest of the organization, why are they required to come, and what does the organization do about them? And then small events which kind of make them feel good, like a few weeks back, I was in Pune, where we have a large factory, and I was hearing from my local leader there that, say, on Women's Day, they took out the women for lunch. So smaller things that could make them feel that they are part of a larger community. The connects and the skips. We started something which is more a coffee chat, and that this was something globally, the entire manufacturing in Honeywell, that organization started, flowing it down, saying, having coffee chats with the leaders on the floor. Some of these things we've done on the non-manufacturing side for a long period of time. We were just bringing some of those back to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We'll speak about that in details, maybe in a couple of minutes. Akash, if I can come to you now, and how are smarter companies looking to enhance engagement with the workers? What benefits do you see acquiring from the enhanced engagement activities? What do you think? How are smarter companies really pivoting now in this tough time? Akash, you will need to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Nasrin, for giving me this opportunity, and especially ET for allowing me to have and put forward my points of view on this panel discussion. This is a very interesting topic. But of course, before pondering onto your point that you have made, I just wanted to bring one particular aspect on the table, is that pandemic or COVID has actually brought us to a new normal. Mm-hmm. It has actually brought the reality to each individual, as an individual, not as managers, but as individuals, as family, as a head of an organization or as a head of a family. We have realized the reality. This has also not only brought a lot of discipline into our life. We have been focusing a lot of things in our factory, in our organizations, to bring in discipline, which COVID has taught us undoubtedly without failing on that particular front. The second point on COVID, particularly to the point which Mr. Rajinder has actually made an impact in the first era of the COVID, which happened in 2020. But probably that was more out of fear. Probably the second and the third wave we have seen going very smoothly without having disrupting the industry per se to a great extent, barring a few sectors like tourism or hospitality and things like this. But I think most of the industry, most of the manufacturing industry have seen a good gain in terms of the demand and the demand going up. So both the organizations as well as the workforce have actually gone in tandem in meeting those demands to a great extent and to the benefit of the organization. So that has definitely played a very hand-on-hand role. In a very simple terms, I would say COVID has actually given us a very new lesson to us, which has really helped us not only disciplining the workforce, also bringing in new talents, new opportunities. At the same time, to the point which Nasrin has made, I think industry as a whole, and we particularly at UFlex have been engaging employees not only during the COVID, but I think for a long time. The point that I also want to ponder here to all the panelists also is the level of education and the kind of system that we have in India brings in to a lot of dismay, not very future ready workforce to our industry. So we have to really gear ourselves up to train them, to really motivate them, to bring up to that level, to make them future ready for the organization to contribute. So I think most of the organization, I would agree, are making their own efforts of like at UFlex, we have our own UFlex Learning Academy, we call it ULA. So we have a variety of programs, development programs, operator development programs, supervisory development programs, wherein we teach them, we motivate them, we bring them hand on hand with the teams to perform and deliver.
Very interesting, this, because some of this is forced, some of this is something that companies want to do. So Chandru, companies also talking about production plan and trying to sync it with the preferences that employees are asking for. This is something that companies are wanting to do. How is a regular work schedule adjusting to this emerging situation?
First, thanks Ashutosh and the ET team for giving me the opportunity to speak here. Privileged to be here. Thanks for that. Before I come to your point on how we have readjusted our scheduling of our workforce, I just wanted to make a couple of points, which just I want to resonate with what other panel members said. COVID has definitely taught all the organizations some lessons. Okay, it has showed clearly where are the areas where we were weak, where we need with some problems which we never presumed or forecasted, or where we never identified that existed, that we are anyway going to discuss. But at the same time, we also discovered some inherent strengths we had as an organization, which was great, I would say. For us in Hindustan Zinc, what we discovered was 80% of our workforce was at least the blue-collar workforce, and even in the company rules, the non-executives and the first-level executives, they were all hired from the thriving communities around near the local communities, 80%. So so we also had an inherent legacy. So people connected that there is a global problem. This is a company which has been operating for 40, 50 years. And whenever we gave them a call for duty, we didn't have any resistance, not that much of resistance for people to come back to work. So like I would say in March 20, when we shut down on 21st March and we started back on 5th April, and we ramped up in just, it was like a fresh commissioning of the entire plant. It was like a fresh commissioning from the scratch, from zero. And we were able to do it in 15 days. By 20th April 2020, we were up and running full. And I would like to give the entire credit to, the workforce which came in with joined hands with us and, believed in us. So I thought I'll take a moment to credit them. And coming to the point on the emerging scenarios and how we have to do the scheduling in line with our production plan, things have totally changed after 2020. Whatever we assumed, like the assumptions which were broken were we need a particular skill set in a particular place. They cannot be rotated. This myth was broken. We need only certain operations we thought are so critical that we should not outsource. That myth was broken. And number 3, some people came out with exhibited tremendous potential, and we were able to identify a lot of leaders for the future. Crisis, adversity sometimes brings the best in many people. So all these things, apart from, also the 4th myth was in the manufacturing industry, it is absolutely necessary for the manager to sit on the head of the workforce and supervise them constantly. That was the biggest myth which was broken. So today, we are in a position that where we believe the workforce, even the blue-collar workforce below. Yes, there are exceptions and they will be there everywhere. On the larger context, we have started believing on our workforce more. And left the scheduling of the contract workforce to the in charges of the business partner, just telling them. The scenario change which I'm seeing after COVID is telling the business partners that this is your target, this is our target, now this is your target, and you have to get it done. You do the scheduling and you deploy your workforce. We trust on you. So this is a paradigm shift from the way we were operating pre-COVID. So I want to be optimistic and ponder upon the good things which COVID taught us. we also went through all those problems which everyone else went through in COVID. But these were significant shifts, which I am experiencing and which is bound to carry on. As Mr. Rajinder said, with IoT, we are able to do all the monitoring from remote locations. We even made provisions to operate our plants. Control rooms were shifted 20-30 kilometers apart, so that in case of no one turning up, the managers can directly operate the plant from their home, from their laptops. We took the operation to that level. So all those things we did in an emergency, but we have now to systematically put methodologies where we can centralize our operations. So, and give more emphasis on the outsourced model. So that's the evolution I see. Thank you, Ashu.
So, silver lining in the dark clouds, and COVID definitely has taught all of us many lessons. And here you've rightly said about the trust that you have started building, more trust, in your employees and the manufacturing plant workers. You also mentioned about the gig workers. Sumeet, I want to come to you, and this question is to you is, basically, given the economic volatility and the technology disruption that we have seen in the last, especially in the last 2 years, and increasing participation of blue-collared employees or the gig employees that we talk about, how is the manufacturing sector navigating these mega trends and planning its workforce management strategies for better productivity?
Sure. Thanks, Nasrin, for that. And I think some great insights from the panelists. In fact, coming to your question on gig workforce, different industries have adopted gig workforce in a very different way, and rightly so. Each industry will have its own nuances in terms of where it fits and where it doesn't fit. And I think, as Mr. Sachdeva mentioned right in the beginning, in fact, a lot of workforce loss, it seems, from manufacturing has happened to industries like the app-based economy, right? The aggregator-based economy, whether it is the Swiggies of the world or what have you. And so we know that the app-based economy, the aggregator-based economy, is almost completely surviving or thriving rather on the gig-based workforce. When we look at manufacturing, especially, I think the definition in my mind, and I look at it this way, I'm sure the panelists will have their views on this, but I look at it this way. If you look at a gig, it's sort of part-time employment, correct? And it works well for the app-based workforce. Now, manufacturing in various ways already had cracked that code a long time back through contract workforce. Of course, you don't have the situation, I think you don't, or rarely do, you don't have the situation where a worker will come for 2 hours and then go home. That Indian laws mostly don't allow. And gig workforce can do that. He can switch on his app saying, I'm ready to work, and you can call him. So there is a difference. But I'm trying to draw an analogy here, where in various ways, manufacturing actually cracked that code by having contractual workforce or casual workforce for a long time. But that does not, the flexibility that gig workforce brings in is very, very different. Can manufacturing use gig workforce? Honestly, I do not know, and I'd love to hear that from the panel here. Might be interesting to hear. In the Western world, I think to an extent these things do happen. But taking this a little further, I also wanted to bring in the introduction of the labor code, which is still not effective, but the introduction of the labor code 2020 actually had a lot of provisions for all of these categories of workforces, including, contractual were given more empowerment. There is a fixed term employment capability that's there, where manufacturers can actually have a much better diversity of workforce. So one of the challenges that manufacturers typically have had is you don't have enough diversity of workforce available, and because of the Factories Act and the law. What the labor code is also doing is, in my mind, in our opinion, is also giving that additional flexibility to manufacturers, as and when it of course becomes applicable. It's also giving manufacturers that additional flexibility to bring in different categories of workforces. Contractual is there, full-time is there, fixed term employment could come in. Who knows, some kind of gig could come in for a very specific category of work in manufacturing. It's worth evaluating. You could probably get into some kind of a app-based aggregator mechanism. So So this is possible. I mean, these are some of the thoughts around how this is moving. I think the driving point to all of this, and I'll take 30 seconds more. The driving point to all of this is, I think Mr. Sachdeva mentioned that, is scarcity of workforce post-pandemic, right? Because the economy is growing, there's not enough workforce, people have gone back, etc., etc. And scarcity drives optimization. With scarcity, if you have to deliver the same, you have to drive optimization, and that drives also better engagement because you've got to retain. So if you see, all of these are together, and that is to me a very significant factor that I think manufacturers will be driving towards.
Okay, I love to hear that point that Chandru also mentioned, and also Sumeet, which you mentioned about the trust factor that comes in, workers, which is a human part of it, and technology, where the two are collaborating, and what Chandru referred to in the way things were turned around in the period immediately after the lockdown happened. Let's move to the second part of the conversation, because Nasrin did mention we'll try and break this conversation into various parts. Let's try and now talk about some of the operational issues faced by the companies. So Rajinder, if you can explain, as companies try and settle in the new routine, what would you say are the biggest operational challenges faced by the workforce in the current situation? And again, partly Sumeet referred to the new labor code that is supposed to come in. It's still being worked out. If you can give a context to that, please.
First and foremost, I see that probably that IR laws, industrial relation laws, and labor code, and unions, automatically they become redundant in the Indian manufacturing also. More or less, I can say that they are becoming redundant. It's people are taking any type of job. It could be the gig or permanent, and people only want that there should be trust, and there should be working conditions which are more conducive for the benefit of the employees. Maybe it's the gig work also, and also some sort of attractiveness toward the manufacturing industry. In the automobile industry, from where I am coming from, I see a very, very big challenge today. How do we attract the talent toward the manufacturing? People who are worked, nobody wants to be leader today. Nobody wants to coordinate the work. He wants to do his own work. Be it somebody working in IT industry, or be it somebody working in the manufacturing, where we suppose the people to come out and do the leadership workforce. Getting the people in the environment, heat, dust, and I can say the difficult environment where the labor, you have to have the manual working also is involved. Coming there, I think that is becoming, attracting the manpower in this type of scenario is becoming the biggest challenge, and that problem has become acute post-COVID because of the workforce scarcity, which I earlier also said that. How do we attract the people? How do we build the competency in them? And then how do we make sure that people stay attracted to this? That's the challenge we are facing at this point of time. And if I see that it will not come through the labor code, personal opinion is that labor code may not help, but how we are taking care of the employees, how we create the workplace which is which offers a comfort to the people in the manufacturing setup. And there, if I have to work there, probably more and more we have to work toward the automation. And one more thing, which particularly I can talk about the automobile industry, may not be, other people may not have that probably empty, because of the chip shortages and ECUs and many other industries which have been facing tier 2 and tier 3 industries. We have seen, because of lot of shortages, rework required in the product has gone up tremendously. Be it, I can talk about Maruti Suzuki, be it the Tata Motor, be it the VCV. Today, vehicles are not coming out of the line fully finished. They're coming partially finished. And then you go back to the vehicle and do the rework. This is a typical problem which we are lingering for last 1 year and probably linger for 1 more years. So looking at all the complexity and difficulty, and also comparative opportunity offered in the other segment like food delivery, e-commerce, or app-based employment, look at all those things. What type of comfort they offer and what type of comfort we offer. We see that people are diverting more toward second set of category of the jobs. And there the challenge is we have to take care of the people. We have to provide the workplace which is conducive, which is good, where he can have, and also offering the hybrid working opportunity, be it on the remote as well as on the spot, that we have to do that thing. And one more area which automobile industry is today facing is that very big disruption coming from the green technology, electromobility, hydrogen-based technology, CNG, LNG. Lot of technologies are coming where the old technology and competencies are becoming redundant. In terms of assembly, you have to learn the new area. But good thing is, post-COVID, people's approach to a digitalization and data-based manufacturing has gone up tremendously. Once there was need was there, where there was no resources were there, people have learned it very fast. And like Chandru was saying that people, I think people have surprised us. I can say very, with a great force, I can say they have surprised with their talent and how fast people can learn. And that opportunity now we are leveraging, that digitalization approach, leveraging, making sure that how to train people. So yesterday person was machining on a lathe. Today, that is not required in electric vehicle. In trucks, it is only that now he has to handle the battery system. He has to power distribution unit. He has to handle the motor. He has to handle the chiller system, different technology. How do we are training them? And there I am seeing that digital approach, digitalization, and using that soft approach, that is helping us a lot. So those are the challenges we are trying to cope up with in this changed environment and disruptions.
Right, Rajinder has really put out a very serious issue in the manufacturing business, and that is that the new challenge is how it's a quick-paced world, and there's a quick transition happening all over the world, and of course that the challenge gets more acute because there's a lot of other issues, like there is a shortage of a lot of raw materials in the manufacturing plant. So moving ahead, Akash, if I can throw that question to you, how leadership, the role of leadership at this transitional point, how are leadership changing or pivoting the companies to steer in this uncertain times, especially during a post-COVID world? Akash.
Thank you, Nasrin. I think not only, as I said in the beginning, COVID has really taught us a different perspective to the whole life cycle. Right from the time when COVID was at its peak, our management, including all the senior management team members, were hand in hand with each and every individual employee of the organization. To our surprise, we could even make a demographic chart of all our employees, which was never ever even thought about. So we know where the employees are living. We know where their families are. We know where are they going. So probably this brought us a lot of new insight into the whole game plan. That's where we bring in, and the HR played a very crucial role in actually mentoring them, motivating them, and bringing them back. The personal touch that has been given in handling, we made learning champions, we make learning engines in each department to handle the workforce at a different level. And they were giving that human touch to each and every individual that bring a lot of difference. So that is how I think these are some of the very few minute things that were being handled, but at a very micro level, which was actually bringing in the confidence. And the workers have actually, at least in our sector, in our industry, we have not seen so much of exodus happening as Mr. Sachdeva might have faced in the automobile sector, where probably it is more human intense. But yes, on the contrary, it also brought us to a lot of technological solutions. We bring in a lot of automation, wherein a lot of processes were either manual or semi-automatic, have now been forced to go into more automation. Now things like AI, or you talk about augmented reality or blockchain and things like app-based applications, a lot of things are being happening. We are even able to commission a machine in Africa, sitting here in Delhi. So which was never ever even been thought about. So this has actually taught us a lot of new things, and the workforce has also geared up to learn these new things, new technologies, and they are in fact more prone to adapting these technologies and these sciences. So this has helped both the industry as well as the individual in the learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
On top of it, I think as a whole, the HR policies, the management, and the workforce, both all these three forces are going hand in hand in building that relationship to take this forward.
Okay, while we move ahead and take some more questions, just a reminder, there's some questions coming in. More questions will always be good. And we'd love to put some of those best questions, some of those chosen questions to the experts. So keep the questions coming in. And if you're in the manufacturing sector, if you're associated with the manufacturing sector, you wouldn't want to miss this opportunity to listen to the experts and what they have to say in response to your question. So looking for more questions as well. Let's move on and talk a little bit about diversity and the wider sense of the word. Urmi, what should be the right approach for a manufacturing company to approach diversity? And I'm talking of also skills here, not just the traditional sense of the word, so that the availability of talent for companies to address some of these operational issues is probably the widest possible.
Absolutely. So, as we automated, and most of the panelists spoke about automation, the need to skill and kind of reskill and upskill becomes one of the most critical ones, because if we have to engage and retain, like we all see as challenges of any sector and any field, the more we can create a career path for them. So career conversations with this group of people is critical at this point of time, right? What is it that they are looking for the future? What are they ready to learn? I mean, we heard that they're surprised by learning, which means that there is an innate ability to do so when it is required. But I think it's very important to, number one, do the reskill and upskilling part of it. Number two, do career discussions with the employees, because we need to understand with the automation and with changes in a lot of things which were done manually and now being with the technological changes, we are automating it. What are some of the other things that people want to do, and where is it they want to move? Which itself will bring in a lot of diversity, as we bring in different skills. And the third point is, which is something I was reading somewhere, that the manufacturing sector is seeing a lot of employees, a lot of new generational employees actually opting to come to the sector. So if we can increase the gender part of it, that is more women coming in, especially because we are automating and we are making things simpler. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to look at a wider base of talent, which brings in diversity. Plus the Generation Z, if they are interested in picking up some of those high-end technology areas that we are automating, I think from both a skill mix as well as the capability mix that we can bring in, we may see a lot more diversity in the manufacturing sector.
Right. Staying on course about diversity as we've been discussing, and I want to ask Chandru about the diversity of skills. Many companies have broadly defined the diversity of skills, and especially in manufacturing plants, diversity of skills is so important, because every part of the entire manufacturing plant is producing something larger whole. So how is this diversity of skills being addressed now, especially because we are transiting so fast?
As I agree to what Dr. Urmi said, it's very critical to manage the diversity. Sometimes you need to use the same scale to kind of manage all the skills. Sometimes you need to take radically different approaches, because our skill set varies from the generation Z generation employees coming from IITs and IIMs to the unskilled people who are coming from the local communities which thrive nearby as helpers, technicians, welders. So it is very important to fundamentally show them a career path. Absolutely, I resonate that with Dr. Urmi. Each one of them, whether it's a helper, whether it's someone coming from an IIM, we need to show them a career path. We need to show them, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, where is that scope for continuous improvement. So the real challenge is setting up systems which can do this. So what we have tried to do here is, we have addressed the fact that everyone has to be appraised, everyone has to be given a career discussion, and everyone has to be shown a career path, and everyone has to be shown their strengths and weakness. But the methodology we have adopted has been different, radically different for the generation which is coming in now, and for the people who have been working with us for the past 15 to 20 years. There we have taken a slightly conventional approach. We have not hesitated to go on an outsourcing model, bring in some experts from companies like Accenture who can come in, bring in a lot of onboarded a lot of experts who have done that on the shop floor training programs and the evaluation programs. We have run a massive skill evaluation program, we have charted down on what is the need of a particular skill set in that particular job. And we have done an evaluation program where we have evaluated our technician, welder, electrician, everyone, and then written down where they are and where is the gap. And we are now systematically trying to address it with training programs, which will run for a long time. This is like it's like swallowing an elephant. I can't do it in one shot. I have to cut it down into small pieces, put some method to that madness, which we are trying to. Whereas when it comes to the generation, which is the next generation, they grasp things quite fast. Actually, the way we treat them is they have to be handheld a little bit more in their initial 1 or 2 or 3 years, because if they get a feeling that they are getting lost, then they just move like this. So for them, what we have to do is we are doing a systematic mentorship program, which we are doing internally. Every engineer or a graduate, because we hire from NITs and IITs and IIMs strictly on our role. So everyone is assigned a mentor from the senior management, and a group of people have one mentor. So the mentor's job is to make sure what is the organizational goal, what is expected out of you, how your contribution contributes to the overall goal of the organization. So all these feedbacks, some of them may be subjective. Not everything can be objective, right? Numbers, targets, production can be objective. But this skill set management is sometimes is a subjective matter, and we handle it that way when it comes to this ultra high skilled people, the Z generation. So this is what we have tried. I'm not saying this is successful, but it has been working to an extent well till now.
Okay, that also gets me to a point that's been slightly sore with the broader sense of people, and this is about layoffs. And Urmi, if you can come in for this, some of the workforce is now returning, and there have been layoffs in the past. That workforce is returning because of the opportunities that are coming now. Part of that because of the training and perhaps reskilling that is happening. How is that challenge, how is that operational issue being addressed among companies, Urmi?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately for us, as I mentioned, our production requirements really went up during the period because of certain specific COVID-related asks. So we didn't need to see that in the organization. But as we look at the industry around us, especially in manufacturing, we felt that, reskilling will become a key and critical element for us going forward. And not only reskilling, one of the other, because, if somebody's skills are becoming obsolete and there is enough work for with the scarcity of talent, there is enough and more work for everybody to do at the end of the day. But are everybody equipped to do what we are requiring? So the demand versus the supply in terms of the skills, sometimes there is a gap. And what organizations should and can do is bridge that internally, that skill gap. So a lot of efforts needs to go in that area to bridge that skill gap, because there are certain skills which are difficult to get in the market. And you have your challenges. Certain skills you may have already people existing, and those skills are transforming towards something else. So building organization learning systems, which are very friendly, user friendly ones, especially for the manufacturing employees, would be a key one. We were also looking at kind of a rotational program for people in key skill areas. So they do something for a period of time, move to something else within the organization. And when I say something else, again, within the same manufacturing sector, but skill-wise, something else that you allow them to learn, because we felt that will bring in some amount of stickiness to stay in the organization if they know that, in today's employee, everything that they are looking at is their own growth and development at the end of the day. And if there are mechanisms which can provide them and tell them that they are upgrading themselves every day in an organization, I think some of these challenges will go away.
Let me just, remind Ashu that there are a lot of questions that we are flooded with. But before we go to question, let me ask Sumeet to come in here and talk a little bit about the scheduling, in a workforce, in a manufacturing unit. It's so important because every day every day is a new challenge, because somebody may fall sick, and especially because of the uncertainty in COVID, there could be somebody not opting for a day shift or a night shift. So how does the work area scheduling optimize the use of workforce in the current operations in the manufacturing sector? So,
sure, Nasrin. And I think when we talk of scheduling, it's another way to put scheduling is putting the right person at the right place with the right skill at the right time, right? That's really the job of scheduling. And I think Chandru, in fact, spoke about scheduling post-COVID and a lot of myths that they, in fact, busted. So scheduling is, I want to connect that to also skilling. I think there's a lot of conversation around skilling and reskilling, which is so true given the way the industry is changing, and you constantly need to skill people. What we've seen, and I come from a technology solutions company, right? So we provide technology solutions to manufacturers, and I can try and bring that perspective in. So what we've seen is when you look at skilling in isolation, having the right skills is important, the most important piece, right? If you don't have the right skills in place, you can't do anything. But skills need to be paired with availability. So when you're starting a shift in the morning and you really have a gap of 2 people with a certain skill, you need to be able to know where possibly alternatively I can find those 2 skills elsewhere in that company, right? So skill being paired with availability actually makes a very big impact as far as output is concerned. Having a database of skills, having great training programs, and having all the skills in one place, multi-skilling is the primary requirement for long-term strategy of an organization. But on a day-to-day basis, to run the business effectively, you've got to start pairing skills with availability. And pairing skills with availability, a third angle that we've seen, which I think some of the panelists addressed earlier also, a third angle to it, or a third factor to it, that we've seen companies now looking at is also preferences of employees. When you're talking to these young employees, you also need to take care of some of their life preferences. You can't tell an employee in that age group saying, boss, for the next 2 weeks or next 1 week, you need to come in a night shift if that person does not want to come in a night shift. You want to retain him, he's a good skilled guy, you need to look at his preferences, right? So skill paired with availability, paired with preferences is really where scheduling is going today, right? And maybe let's take preferences a step further. Can you get preferences to the extent of giving self-service to your blue-collar employee? Right? It's not something that you may want to do for every employee in the organization. Some companies may want to, some may not want to, but think about it. Can you create your shifts, open shifts without people in it, and publish it out to your employees, all employees, who on the mobile phone can go and say, okay, I'd like to, on the first come first serve basis, maybe I can go ahead and pick these shifts, of course, based on skill, etc., etc. The moment you do that, you're creating so much more empowerment for those employees who traditionally have always felt that I need to come when I am asked to come, right? So to me, when it comes to scheduling, I think there is a larger dynamic around it, which is the ability of an organization to pair skill, availability, and preference together. And doing that is not easy manually. That is where we come in as a typical technology intervention. But that's a discussion for a side. But the skill, availability, preference is to me a very significant parameter.
Very interesting, Sumeet, that you've referred to skill, because skill is something that a lot of people want to know more about. So some of the questions that are coming in, so this is around skills. So let me get some of these questions in. And the first question comes in from Rajinder Baghel. And here's what Rajinder writes. What can be done to improve the skill matrix of the workforce in the time of pandemic where direct communication is not possible due to restrictions? This workforce is also not digitally savvy, where online programs can be conducted. Rajinder, Sachdeva, this is something that can help transition workers from one set of skills to the next one. How can industry approach this?
Here we found a unique solution about 1.5 years back that we created an associate management software we created. The app is available with all the supervisors available. So anytime any person, blue collar or white collar, they come in that data is available, and the allocation is done by the respective supervisors on the app itself. And he knows that which are the people available, which are not, what their competency levels are there, and how to qualify the diversity and versatility for that job. And on that, the allocation is done. Now, once we deploy the manpower based on what is available, absenteeism is managed because you have in the morning itself, you have visibility, who are the people available and who are not available. And with that, one is that we are able to deploy the right people at the right place on the assembly line. Second is we also know that what are the level of competencies are there. Since all the data is available remotely through the app, digitally, and then it becomes very easy for the HR also to plan the training and upgradation of the people competency based on that thing. That's what we implemented, and we feel that, and people, the way they took up the challenge and they jumped to this new way of learning, and which is the digital learning. I think this has helped us a lot to build that competence.
Mm-hmm. So next question that I want to take it from Mani Das. He writes that I gather that manufacturing companies should have collaborations with technical institutes to get some ready workforce to pick their incoming job profiles, besides on-job trainings, which give good results because of the flexibility of Indian talent. Urmi, would you like to take that?
Sure. Being a large global organization and we have manufacturing footprint across the globe, we've created our in-house learning systems. So, and those are on-demand learning kind of a thing, because we wanted, like we all said, we wanted everybody to be empowered, including our manufacturing employees, of what they choose to learn, because sometimes a choice becomes important. So the whole concept was, can we have a Netflix kind of a experience on learning, right? So people choose what they want to do, and they can go and pick up that module and do it. And there is no pressure on anybody saying you need to complete these 10 or these 15. It's across the board in every function that we have created that journey, which is applicable to all our manufacturing employees. Having said that, we do realize that there are a lot of technical skills where tie-ups really help, because those people come with very specific inputs, and typically, in a short duration, and we call them boot camps. In those boot camps, people can upgrade themselves in specific skills in a very short span of time. It doesn't take months, because you just don't have the time to afford that, because you needed people to be up and running at any point of time. But that's one of the areas that we have looked into. And there's something also unique that we have done, which is all about having something called growth days across Honeywell. So the growth days are more about a particular day which is dedicated to learning for the employees, including the manufacturing. So we feel that, and that's a post-pandemic, we've started that, which is, we call it a growth day because it's an individual's growth that we are focusing on. And we do that once in a month, and that ensures that people are focused on their learning. So that could be through tie-ups, like you said, with organizations, or that could be our internal learning mechanisms that we are doing.
Okay, that's one way to address the problem. Now, what could be the impact of such learning? And that's a question that is coming from Chandar Bhandari, and Chandar writes, is there any cultural change observed in its own? And this is what Chandra is writing, so I'm just reading out. Is there any cultural change observed on its own or with management's efforts in the industry? Or is it for good, and how is it helping? Chandru, can you detail some changes that you, or the cultural changes is what Chandra wants to know, that may have been seen in your company, or if you see it wider as well?
Yeah, so there is definitely a shift in the culture, right? Like Sumeet said, no, I like that equation. It is like skill, preference, and availability. Preference part is something where there is a real shift happening in the industry. Like when it comes to the new generation of people coming in, if you want to retain people, then you need to listen to their preferences. You can no more that this generation doesn't wish to be instructed, or kind of they believe in a methodology where they are told what is their job, what is the objective of their job, what is the end result expected out of them, and leaving the do part to them, and now this is, in a conservative industry, it becomes very difficult for the managers to let your people go and work the way they want. Sometimes you end up micromanaging or telling them the details. So this generation never wants the details to be given. They wanted to do it their way. So that's a shift which is definitely coming. I know it's nowhere related to the pandemic, but yes, this shift is coming, and this shift is essential for organizations to retain talent in the upcoming period. And apart from that, when it comes to the people, the blue collar workforce, we need to be more considerate, empathetic, and parental to them. When you also need to tell them, you come in putting your family, yourself at risk during times when it is difficult for people to move out of the house. So we also in turn have to tell them, so what are the precautions we have done? How have we maintained the safety in the workplace? How have we maintained social distancing in case something happens to you? How are we covering your medical expenses? How are we covering your family? Like how we also made sure we ensured that every single employee and their family got vaccinated by the company only, so that to make sure whoever is coming in is safe. I know. So that kind of approach has to percolate downwards till the last level. This is the second cultural change I'm seeing. Usually usually don't give such an empathetic view towards the business partner or the contractual workforce, but that can no more happen in today's world. We need to take care of them as good as we take care of the employees, because ultimately if they want to deliver your goals, they need to be connected to your values. Then from our side, we also need to percolate the goodness till the last level of the business partner workforce, and that cultural change has started happening. So I'm optimistic that these are the changes I'm seeing, and I'm sure this will evolve further.
Right. Like I said, there are a lot of questions coming in, but I think I can squeeze in one last question. This is from Vivek Kumar, and he writes, post-COVID, we found out that there is certain downfall in manpower. So what could be the possible solution to bring in, considering the basic non-technical manpower who aspire to join manufacturing industry? Akash, if I can put that question to you.
Sorry, Nasrin, can you repeat the question? I missed that part of it.
Okay, so he writes that post-COVID, there is a certain decline in manpower in the manufacturing industry. So Vivek Kumar wants to know what would be the possible solution to bring in, considering the basic non-technical manpower who aspire to join the manufacturing industry.
See, if the question is specifically for a non-technical level of employees that are aspiring to join in the industry, there are a couple of opportunities that do exist in the organization, not of course in the technical side, but on the services side. So a lot of the support functions are available for those level of people who can definitely rope in, and we do run a lot of programs for non-technical skills that come into our organization. We always have fresh blood coming in every year, and that helps us build build that kind of a workforce. So even if somebody is non-technical, there are ample opportunities available in industry, especially in manufacturing industry, where they can definitely come and rope in.
Okay, so quite a few questions coming in from the audience. So in case you want more, probably you can try and put in some of your questions as well. While we move on to the next part and the third part that, if you remember, just going back, Nasrin referred to, we'll try and break the conversation into three parts. So this one, we'll try and focus on some of the softer issues, while some of that has been spoken about while we were going about since we began. Let me first ask Rajinder for this one. Rajinder, given the commitment that has been shown by some of the workforce, how is their progression being thought of after growth has returned? What is the change you're seeing? How are the systems gearing up for that within companies? And maybe if you'd like to specifically mention about your own company as well.
Yeah, I think empathy has, what I also learned here from the other panel speakers, that empathy has been much better post-COVID for each other. Trust has come in because the industries took care of the employees, their workforce, both blue collar and white collar. That has helped us to build a very greater trust. And the time of difficulty and crisis, naturally, it's a human mentality that to come together in the hour of crisis. So that's why I see that the people have come together. And with that, empathy has improved. And some of the once after the lot of downturn for last 2 years, when the industry and economy is returning, people are coming forward and helping to, in the face of the chip shortage and other shortages, they are helping to increase the production and support the management in any manner. That's what change I have seen in the people. And they are that in this period, we shouldn't lose the opportunity, and whatever demand is coming from the marketplace, that's taken care of that. That's a one very big and positive change we are doing that thing. Third, we are seeing that competency building, very high focus on building that diversity, and COVID has taught us that when the manpower is short because of any problem, you should have more versatility in the workforce. That can be achieved through the training. And fourth thing is that we have planned to build the competency and also build the career plans for the many of our manufacturing teams. We have now, Volvo is our joint venture partner, and with them, we are joining hands so that our team can be trained at Volvo plants in Gothenburg and in Sweden, in those areas. So there also we are creating programs so that we can train our workforce on the better automated plants, digital plants, and Industry 4.0 compliant plants. So that is also one change we are bringing in, which will help us to retain the people and create a very, very win-win situation within the plants.
Right, as Rajinder is mentioning about the preparedness of companies to probably meet the challenges for the next decade. Urmi, I want to come to you and sort of ask you about how data-driven companies in the manufacturing sector is changing the way manufacturers operate, and how are they going to tackle the challenges that probably may come in the next decade, maybe by 2030.
Yeah, so when you talk about the challenges, if we talk about the capability and competency of the people to handle data-related transformations, that's a large focus area for us, and I would believe for a large number of organizations in the industry would have a similar focus. And what we have seen is that, other than just learning and development, we feel that, as I mentioned earlier, the rotational programs that we are something that we want to start off would be a great booster to this, because till you put people on the job on similar skills that we foresee coming in the future, and you cannot predict what's going to come in a long-term future, but in at least a short-term future, some of the data-driven changes, some of the automation, having kind of digital boards on the floor. Like, so in every factory that we have boards on the floor where you get to see the competency of the people at that point of time. But we are moving towards changing some of those boards and the visualization becoming more digital. Now, how do we do that if the people using them are not geared enough to do that? So that's definitely one. The other thing I think we may need to start thinking about is tying out with a lot of technical institutions from where maybe in future we will all go for talent. So educational institutions and the partnership that the corporate world can build with them much ahead of time. Because some of these things you can even start at a university level, at an ITI level, where as you are preparing people to come to the industry, you actually gear up their digital skills, their technical skills, and you help them. So that kind of a partnership with the corporate could be something very critical in the future. Even we have done it in many other areas. I think we need to look at the manufacturing sector and start doing the industry academia partnership in a much more stronger way.
Okay, very interesting, because this is something that industry, more and more Indian industry is being encouraged to partner with some of those leading institutions of learning as well. Akash, UFlex being one of the leaders in its category, how can the operations part and the HR part come together and maybe look at re-architecting work, making it more exciting for the workforce and make the workplace win with the emerging technology? So I know this is quite a mouthful, but the big picture is what I'm trying to understand from you.
See, apart from the normal automation of all the HR policies and processes like PMS or collaboration, communication, and things like this, HR per se in UFlex has done a very tremendous work in bringing in the cloud-based SCM application. So that has also helped employees and workforce to a great extent in bringing speed and execution at a much faster pace. So in terms of collaboration with the employees in forming these cloud-based applications, taking their inputs, incorporating those into the cloud-based application, it is actually a handheld. You can do it on your mobile and things like this, sitting at your home. HR has definitely done a tremendous job in UFlex, which has actually helped the employees to increase their efficiency and performance. On top of it, I would say there is a constant dialogue which is happening both at the performance level as well as at the personalized level in terms of issues being faced by employees, work groups in different sections, different departments, at an organizational level, at a divisional level. So these kind of programs do keep happening. We do a lot of social engineering kind of thing. We do a lot of meets with the employees. A lot of games are being played. Cricket is one of the things that do happen, bring in different divisions competing with each other and things like these. So HR has been on the forefront in bringing these changes to a great extent in UFlex. And that has actually made UFlex a very bonding place too. We have employees which are from hire to retire. So that kind of a culture has been here, not only in the blue collar, but also in the white collar. So here in UFlex, you would find people who have actually spent their whole life. So that speaks of the kind of practices and the policies and the approaches that the organization, the management, and the HR has been taking into helping the employees at a holistic approach way.
Cricket really excites Ashu, and I could see him smiling when you mentioned about cricket. That's one passion that Ashu follows very, very religiously. So moving on, Sumeet, if you talk about industry specific, if you want to talk about pharma or healthcare, where global compliances are very much required to be followed, what do you think, what are some of the challenges faced by manufacturing operations of companies in the pharma or healthcare segment? Can you shed some light on that?
Sure, Nasrin. And I think when we maybe taking a step back to that question, when you look at the resources that manufacturers use, say material, manpower, machines, it's the manpower that is subjected to compliances, right? I mean, other machines to an extent are, but that's not such a big deal. They don't deviate from compliance. but manpower, the additional complexity that comes with running a shop floor or a business, a manufacturing shop floor, is of course compliance. You've got to be within the law of the land. Yeah, I think you asked the question on pharma. Of course, pharma is one of the most regulated industries in the world, because of the nature of what they produce, and the business in India also is so much driven with say Europe or US, which means you also have additional compliances like FDA. You've got social compliances where a customer might walk in and do an audit, and that keeps happening every other day for a pharma company. Now, so manufacturers, when we look at all of these parameters, and I think we've spoken, panelists have spoken some tremendous stuff about managing the workforce, engagement, skilling, reskilling, deployment, initiatives, so on and so forth. There is an underlying base or a cover that it all needs to happen under a certain compliance, right? You need to be able to make sure that you're taking care of the compliances in whichever way possible. Which is where I think with increasing complexity, increasing diversity of workforce, larger organizations, larger locations, etc., one of the things that we are seeing organizations looking at moving into is how can, and this is where digitization actually helps more, are looking at moving into how can there be more proactive compliance. By that I mean, can there be more proactive alerts, mechanisms to highlight it to the leadership, saying this is an area that is potentially going out of zone, right? When you have a control room managing a machine, there is always proactive alerts around, say, something hitting a limit. You proactively know that you've got to control it. Can you actually do that on compliances also? Because you do not want, and we have heard stories in India. Some of the panelists here come from a different industry, so maybe it's not impacted them. But every other day there are stories in India where FDA shuts down a pharma plant, right? Purely because one or two small things just did not were not taken care of. So the ability to spot problems in advance, I think, is becoming more and more critical. And as enforcement of compliance will become stronger across industries, which I think will happen with the labor code whenever it gets applied, I think organizations will need to look at more proactive compliance mechanisms. And I think, again, call me biased because I come from the technology world, but again, the fact is digitization really helps there, because you really cannot put manpower. You can't throw manpower to this problem, right? Yeah. You really need to have some automated artificial intelligence, etc., to manage this.
The preventive part of it more than the curative part.
You're right.
Like to,
absolutely.
Put it there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Chandru, on location, hybrid workers, remote workers, there is a combination, full workforce, not full workforce, and different kinds of workforce. This is also a challenge as we move ahead for employee productivity to be measured very objectively. What are some of the opportunities, what are some of the challenges that companies face, and how do you see this being addressed going ahead, Chandru?
I first take complete cognizance of the problem. What after this pandemic, there are a certain set of people who prefer to work on a remote mode. And we are a kind of industry where honestly, we cannot afford much people to be on remote mode when we are running somewhere near to normal. But yes, the answer to the first part of the question is we don't have a choice of giving, optional options to workforce to work from remote locations or remote working. So we have kind of shifted to complete to a model where everyone has to come back. We are absolutely back to normal. Our entire operations, all our workforce, the entire workforce is working from site, including me. So because we don't have an option, I hope that's the same for most of the manufacturing setup, because we are still a little bit conservative. We have not digitized ourselves to that level, as Sumeet said, to control it. We did some stopgap arrangements, but largely we are working from on-site. but to objectively measure performance and productivity. So the only way out which we are trying is measuring the output of every individual in an objective way. So that's what we are trying to do. Like you bifurcate the entire target into small segments, into shift wise, hour wise, and find a way to monitor it. And wherever we have manual operations, you just display a scoreboard where who's performing where, create an internal competition, productivity competition, so that people can see that where they stand in the whole lot. So what we have felt is more than money, what matters to people is their pride, so that the thrive for pride, creates that little bit of competition, which by which they tend to do a little bit more than normally what they do. So so we need to bring in some digital solutions everywhere. We are able to do it in areas where it's our finished good production, or where we are able to absolutely measure what's coming out on a per hour basis or a per shift basis. Where we are not able to do that, for example, the maintenance crew. How do we maintain the productivity of a fitter? How do we maintain the productivity of an electrician? Maybe after the maintenance call, after that particular guy ABC or that crew has attended an equipment, what is the mean time between that failure and the next failure? And prepare a chart. Maybe I'm just wildly throwing some ideas. We are also thinking how to measure that productivity very objectively. But for sure, I agree with Sumeet in this point. Digitization is the only way. Going ahead, we need to bring all our equipments to IoT, monitor their performances and monitor their breakdowns, and link it with the crews which are attending it, and then creating some competitive dashboard where everyone is evaluated by a system where there is no bias and people trust that system. So that's the way I see things going forward on objectively measuring performance on across skills. And the difficult part is in the blue collar jobs, because on the white collar jobs everyone has a number, and you have a denominator and you have an actual numerator, and things get divided and the outcome comes. But when it comes to the blue collar jobs, that's where we need real digitization to come in.
Right. Competition also imbibes a team spirit on the shop floor, I'm sure, and that will keep the work going. Asha, do we have time for another question, or should we?
I think why don't you? I mean, maybe Nasrin, if you can probably try and squeeze one more question.
Okay, we still have time. So Rajinder, I want to ask the last question to you. Technology, along with the operational excellence, has been the biggest disruptor, as we have been talking in the last 90 minutes. For a large company like yours, how can you continue to work with technology and avoid being disrupted?
I see that there's no other alternative. We have to adapt ourselves to the new realities and use the technology under the Volvo production system, which we follow, and their various pillars are there. And one pillar on the cost reduction, one pillar is on the productivity improvement, another pillar on the technology use and competency building. All those pillars are there, and use of technology, we have seen, we have taken advantage, reaped the benefits during the COVID. And going forward, we plan in big way for automating the various operation, and also so that all the database through is accessed by the remotely also. And Volvo Group is also helping us in that. We are working together with our GTO organization in Volvo, making sure that implementation, and they actually every year they come and assess the plants under the VPS Volvo production system, and then rate us according to globally. And there the technology parameter is very, very prominent. And we'll continue to do that. And that's our endeavor that all our plants should be VPS Gold compliant over the next 2 to 3 years. And that's what we are working for.
Well, setting the global benchmark. So obviously something to look forward to and work towards given the way high standards Volvo sets, that could be some challenge. But just about enough time for Sumeet, if you'd like to just put together a note of thanks for all the panelists and for the audience as well.
Sure. Thank you, Ashutosh. First of all, I'd like to heartfelt thanks to the panelists for taking time and coming in, Mr. Sachdeva, Dr. Urmi, Akash, and Chandru. I think it's been wonderful that you took time, and I think some wonderful insights from you. I learned a lot today, and it just helps me do my job better. So thank you so much for joining us here. Thank you to the audience who took their time, valuable time, and joining us. I think with the number of questions that you asked and the number of people that asked questions shows how engaged you were through the whole discussion as well. So thank you for that as well. I look forward to staying in touch. I look forward to hopefully crossing paths some other day. But back to you, Ashutosh and Nasrin.
I can see that your phone is already ringing, Sumeet, and I would imagine there are already calls that are coming. So wonderful to hear that, and wonderful to see that as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Rajinder, Chandru, Akash, and Urmi, for being with us on this wonderful conversation, where, as Sumeet mentioned, there was a lot to learn, and some of the very interesting points that I've taken note of the way industries are handling some of the challenges, and manufacturing industries are handling some of those challenges. Nasrin, any last words for you?
So thank you so much. I think we had a very insightful conversation going into the deeper layers of manufacturing sector. And of course, it is a known fact that this is one sector which is not only evolved from the challenge, but also set new goals for the other sectors to follow. And I'm sure as we go ahead, there are raw material issues as we talk about. There are issues because of inflation, but I'm sure this manufacturing industry is going ahead and taking the challenges on their head. So on that note, I think it's time to say thank you to all of our panelists and my co-moderator Ashutosh Sinha. Thank you so much.